In this video, I want to talk to you about AOP, the Hayward Hydrapure, what it is, what it does, should you get one for your swimming pool. Let's unpack this a little bit here because this is one of the newer pieces of technology that you could get for your swimming pool. So first things first, AOP, Advanced Oxidation Process. So an oxidizer is something like hydrogen peroxide, for example, or potassium monopersulfate. These are things which could and would be used in swimming pools for some reason sometimes. Oxidizers in general are something that swimming pools absolutely need. You're already using it. You might not realize chlorine is an oxidizer. It's actually a bunch of stuff. It's an oxidizer, it's a sanitizer, it's an algicide, and most importantly, it can build and hold a residual value in the water. That's something that pretty much no piece of peripheral equipment that you can install for a swimming pool can do. There's nothing in there short of an erosion feeder that's just feeding chlorine into your system. There's no alternative to chlorine is what I'm saying. So that's something I want to address right up front with a piece of fancy technology like this Hydrapure unit here. This is not a standalone replacement for chlorine. It's a desirable thing to ask for or request as a pool owner, totally understand, but fundamentally we don't have the technology yet to make your pool safe enough using any other means other than chlorine. I mean, there's stuff that can get you pretty close, but there's nothing that has the same level of protection, and that's why as a pool professional we always say you need chlorine. You've got to maintain 2 to 5 parts per million of free chlorine at all times in the water. Really, 1 part per million is the minimum number that you have to maintain, but a short rain shower would eliminate 1 part per million of chlorine in the average pool. Now your chlorine's at 0, algae starts growing immediately. That's something you want to avoid. You never want your chlorine to drop to 0, and that's why kind of 2 parts per million is the minimum recommended amount. So let's talk about this because one of the features or benefits of a product like this that it's going to do for you. What's it going to do? Well, it's going to be an oxidizer. It's going to act as an oxidizer in the water. And that means that you're not going to need the chlorine to be doing that same process for you. Like, it still has other functions in the water, but the heavy lifting of the oxidizing or oxidation process is going to be done by the AOP unit. So what does this do? In fact, this thing does a lot of stuff. It kills chloramines and bacteria and parasites and algae and potentially even metals and odors and all kinds of stuff. It's other things, other options kind of molecularly reduce the thing in the water to something else, something that's more organic or easier to get rid of. This thing kind of does the molecular equivalent of just dropping a bomb on the whole water system. So there's nothing left. After it passes through an AOP unit, there is nothing left in that water that's not supposed to be there. And that's kind of the advantage of these things. So an AOP unit like the Hydrapure generates hydroxyl radicals. That's the actual mechanism by which it oxidizes your water. Hydroxyl radicals. That sounds terrifying. What is that? I don't want one of those. Hydroxyl radicals are something that exists, are plentiful in the lower Earth's atmosphere. This is nature's organic process of keeping air clean. So it's not something that is unheard of, and it's not something that is as radical as it sounds. So it's an oxidizer, basically, right? But by the name, advanced oxidation process implies it's a little bit more than a regular oxidizer. Basically, if I could just summarize it in the most easy way to understand, this is an oxidizer system or an oxidizing system on steroids. It's exactly how it works. Whatever you can picture that system normally working like, whether it be an ozone system or an H2O2 injection system or any other way that you are oxidizing any organic contaminants in the water, this thing is 1,000,000 times faster acting than that. So that's kind of like the technologies. It's this incredibly fast acting oxidizer, oxidation process. As a result, you're going to be experiencing some differences in your water in terms of how much chlorine that you're having to use, the amount of residual contamination that you experience, like chloramines or things like that, which would normally require breakpoint chlorination to get rid of. If you develop chloramines or spent chlorine after the chlorine's done its job, once the chlorine's done its job, it now exists in the water as a chloramine. When chloramines build up, that's when you start to get problems with your water, where it looks dull, listless, cloudy, starts to smell bad, starts to not respond to other chemical treatments that would normally give you predictable reactions. This is the function of chloramines, and you got to get rid of them. Normally, you have to use a whole ton of chlorine, not an actual ton, but you have to use a lot of chlorine, increase your free chlorine level to be 10 times the level of your combined chlorine level, and then hold it there for 12 to 14 hours. It's a lot of chlorine. And if you never build chloramine levels because you have some sort of peripheral device which handles the removal of those chloramines or the destruction of those chloramines for you, then you don't need to use a chemical treatment process to get rid of them. I mean, you can't get away from chloramines. You're gonna have them if you use chlorine, which you better be, so you have to have some method to get rid of them. This is a great option. That's one of the material ways in which an AOP system would benefit you in your swimming pool. It is not going to eliminate the need for chlorine. You're still going to need to have it. But if I tell people to look at your chlorine use on an annual basis versus like a 2 parts per million day by day. Just look at it on the total. If you were to use half as much chlorine as you did last year, would you not consider that a win? Is that not a step towards your goal of a swimming pool using less chemical sanitizers? I would say yes. Now, wait a minute. There's no free lunch, and I want you to understand something here. An AOP system like the Hydrapure certainly has the ability to help in the way that I just described, but it's a nuance. It's complicated. Every swimming pool is different, and I'll summarize it this way. You have a pool which hardly gets used, and you have a pool with a very high bather turnover, lots of organic debris from trees, and people swim every day. So these two pools will not benefit in the same way from adding an AOP system in terms of how much chlorine you're going to save. The system itself, by virtue of how it functions, consumes some of the chlorine that you add. So you have to reach this equilibrium where, yes, you're using less because of the work it's doing, but also you're using more because it's consuming some of the chlorine you're adding. And where do you net out? On a pool that has a small bather turnover, very low organic debris loads, that pool will benefit less. Probably it's a wash. Probably you don't use less chlorine at all. On a pool that has a much higher bather turnover level, much higher amount of organic contaminants within the water, this is the pool which is going to benefit probably pretty drastically from adding an AOP unit in terms of the amount of chlorine that you're going to be using in this pool on an annual basis. So that's kind of the spectrum of how AOP is going to help in this particular way of removing chloramines, consuming some chlorine in the function of doing its job, but ultimately netting you a positive result for lessening the amount of chlorine you're buying every year on pools which have higher bather turnovers. Do you get any benefit if there's not a reduction in the amount of chlorine that you're using on an annual basis? Like if I'm describing your pool, we don't use it all that much. I wanted better water, but if I'm not using less chlorine, what's the point? Well, there's actually a couple of different things that are happening here where the AOP is going to still be benefiting you. Using less chlorine sanitizer in your pool is one thing that you might want to get out of having a peripheral device like the Hydrapure installed, but it's not the only thing you get. As I was describing earlier, this unit has the ability to destroy parasites, organic contaminants, anything that's in the pool that you don't want there, far more so than any other technology that exists for swimming pools, bar none. So there's a thing. If you're coming to me and saying, hey, swimming pool Steve, I want the best, cleanest, safest, highest quality water that I can get in my swimming pool. This would obviously be a complicated, nuanced conversation. There's reasons why you're asking me this, and we need to explore all those reasons. That being said, very likely we are immediately going to enter into the conversation discussing hydroxyl radical generators like this Hydrapure from Hayward. So it saves you money on chlorine potentially, or at the very least, it does a better job of helping you to keep your water free from impurities. So what else is this thing doing? What do you need to know about the Hydrapure from Hayward? Well, I mean, I've talked about AOP in general a little bit. Let's talk about this unit in particular, because there's a couple brands on the market that you might be looking at, and they're all going to be unique, and you've got to dive into the technical details of how it works, and that's why I want to give you a couple of things that you should know. For example, and this will kind of explain where I'm going here. So this unit has an operating range of 10 gallons per minute all the way up to 120 gallons per minute. It's the maximum that you can put through it. If you were to anticipate an amount of flow in excess of that, you would locate this off of the trunk line of your filtration set on a bypass, a zoned bypass. And that way you could regulate the amount of flow that's going to the unit. But here's an important point. This unit has a 99.9% sterilization rate at up to 80 gallons per minute. In excess of that, you are falling short of that sterilization goal. Now, in theory, you filter the water from your pool over and over again. We call those turnovers. The volume of your pool through the filtration set once per day is called one turnover. And we do recommend in the pool industry that you aim for something in the range of 3 turnovers per day, which is going to net you somewhere in the range of 95% of all of the water in your pool being filtered at least one time. It would be nice if all of the water that we just filtered actually was sterilized and oxidized through this process. But if you're operating at really high flow rates, you might not be getting that level of quality. And that's why they stipulate up to 80 gallons per minute. And my advice to you as Swimming Pool Steve is, 1, buy and use a variable speed swimming pool pump. When you do so properly, it is going to save you a crap load of money. It is going to enhance the way that your pool filters. It is going to give you more flow control of your system. It will benefit you in every way. But no, Swimming Pool Steve, it's so much money, I have to buy one. Yes, it is a lot of money, and you are going to have to buy one. And before that pump dies, hopefully, it will have paid you back in electrical savings anywhere between 100 to 300% of the purchase price of that pump. For sure, I'm going to get comments. I bought one and it broke and I'm out all this money. Things happen. I don't know what to tell you. I've worked on the national level for pool equipment, manufacturing, sales, and support, and I know that by and large, the failure rate is really low for pool equipment in general, and variable speed pumps in particular, because of the totally enclosed fan-cooled design. It's actually a really superior design. But when you think of how many pumps get sold, if there's 10 million pumps that get sold, some of those pumps are going to fail early. Some of them are going to fail at the box. Some of them are going to show up with just a big box full of rocks instead of a swimming pool pump. This is just the law of averages. It's going to happen. But the thing is it doesn't really give you a fair indication as to what the industry represents. You might have actually a very, very low chance of your pump breaking right out of the box or breaking anytime early. In theory, you should be getting 7 full years of operation out of your pool pump. Pool pump manufacturers recommend that's kind of like the minimum range is 7 years, and that refers to continual operation. So if you were in a seasonal zone with, you only run half of the year, you're supposed to get twice as long. That's a long time for a pool pump. I see them fail before that all the time. But variable speed pumps aren't exactly new. They came out a long time ago, like 10 plus years. There's been a lot of them on the market. They've been there for a long time. They've been improving the designs of these pumps, and they're pretty darn reliable. I wouldn't hesitate to buy one. It's going to save you money. And why am I telling you? Because the way you save the money is running your pool pump 24 hours a day. Used to be, you got to turn the pump off part of the day, or you're going to be paying an arm and a leg for electricity for the pool pump. It doesn't work like that with a variable speed pump. If there's any time of the day that you've turned the pump off, those are just more hours for potential savings, because slow and low, long hours of low speed operation are the way that you arrive at the maximum amount of filtered water for the minimum amount of money every day. How does the AOP fall into this? The way this system works best, if it just runs all the time. Ideally, if you have an AOP system like the Hydrapure, you just want to run the pool pump 24 hours a day. Let it do its thing with the low and slow economical filtration, and let this thing do its thing by constantly being exposed to new pool water that you're turning over in the filtration set, so it can do its thing oxidizing the contaminants, parasites, and organic debris that are in your water. So is this just some fancy new technology that's also going to break Swimming Pool Steve? Well, AOP is pretty new overall. It was only developed in 1894, and geez, that feels like just yesterday to me. Well, the truth be told is the scientific process might be well over 100 years old, but the commercial application of AOP for use in wastewater systems began in 1987. 1987 is a long time ago. I barely remember 1987. So it isn't brand new, but I will concede this. It's brand new to the pool industry. 10 years ago, nobody had an AOP system on their swimming pool, at least at the residential level. Now, still hardly anybody does. These are rare. This is not something that you're going to see on every single swimming pool. but you are going to start seeing it more and more because this thing does a lot of the stuff that swimming pool owners are asking for. But it is fairly, complicated technology, and as a result, a lot of people don't really know about it, don't understand it, don't realize how it's going to benefit them. So it's not a standalone system. You still need the chlorine. It's not new technology, but it's not exactly tried and true either. So you got those two things. What's the trifecta? It ain't cheap either. That's the reality. Like, you're not picking up one of these used for $100. Like, you're gonna have to spend some money if you want the highest quality swimming pool water possible. And if we're honest, we're talking about swimming pools here. Something which is a massive luxury, possibly the biggest luxury that the average person might ever purchase. So yeah, we're talking about a lot of money. So now we're talking about health and safety and a lot of money for your swimming pool. Yeah, the bolt-on equipment that you might need to buy is not going to be super, super cheap. Like a hydroxyl radical generator. Does any part of that sound inexpensive to you? I don't think so either. But why would you not get a radical generator for your pool? I mean, until somebody develops a ludicrous generator, this is about as good as you can do in terms of new technology, highest potential benefit to you, reducing the amount of chemical sanitizers that you're using in the water, just making a higher quality of water overall than was otherwise able to be achieved at the residential swimming pool level. That's what AOP, like this Hayward Hydrapure unit, does. That's who could benefit from it. So where do I get one of these things? Well, I mean, you can probably not find it on the internet. The intention with this product is this is something that you would buy through a protected dealer line. A local pool and spa professional is who you would buy this product from. They'd install it for you. You'd receive maximum warranty, and presumably you would want to receive maximum warranty. Largely, the pool industry is just steering away from the do-it-yourselfer. They kind of want you to buy through the local pool and spa professionals. It's what the professionals wanted. It's what the manufacturers responded to by creating dealer select product lines with enhanced warranty offerings and more frills and different models, things like that. You can still get products on the open line in the pool industry, but they're usually like older models or limited in selection, have lesser features than other ones, and in cases like this, maybe just not available at all. So if you want to pick up an AOP Hydrapure system from Hayward, you should talk to your local pool and spa professional. They're going to be able to help you with availability. They're going to be able to help you with installation. They're going to also be able to answer any questions for you in terms of warranty offerings, how to use the thing, stuff like that. And just to touch on it, it's not super complicated to use it. There's not a ton of different moving parts and pieces here. Basically, you just turn it on. There's a couple of output lights that lets you know, hey, this thing's working. Keep that flow rate somewhere between 10 and 120 gallons per minute, and you're pretty much golden. It's as far as it goes, it's not something that needs a ton of maintenance. That being said, this is not maintenance free. It's not something that you could just like plug it in, never look at it for 10 or 15 years and it's doing its thing. It's not intended to work like that. Like, there's bulbs in here, light bulbs, which are going to need to be replaced, and you would be indicated to that because you're going to be shown on the control panel that, oh, hey, there's a problem with one of the bulbs, you need to check this out. And most likely that's going to be either a cleaning situation or less likely a cleaning situation, or more likely just periodic replacement of the bulbs every few years. The AOP system from Hayward is able to handle pools in volume up to 60,000 gallons. That's a lot. And you're like, well, my pool's not 60,000 gallons or anywhere near that amount. I've got a 10,000 gallon pool. Can I use this thing or not? Absolutely. It actually is not a disadvantage at all to use it on a small pool. It will just be even more effective on a large pool. They're just saying that you can use this up to 60,000 gallons and still receive the benefit. And that's primarily due to the fact that it's able to have the 99.9% sterilization rate at up to 80 gallons per minute. Like, 80 gallons per minute's a lot. You sure wouldn't run 80 gallons per minute 24 hours a day in a small pool. You might in a large pool, and this thing would be able to keep up with you if you needed to do that. It has 2.5 by 2 inch CPVC unions, which come included in the unit. It's got the availability of 115 volts or 230 volts for installation. I made a whole unboxing video that shows all the parts and pieces that come with it. So you can check that out if you're interested. Probably in the description you'll find a link for that. The control panel is very small and actually not something that you're really going to interact with very much. As you can see, you've got the inlet and the outlet on the back here. That's pretty much it. It's a pretty straightforward unit, in and out, minimal interfacing with the control pad. It's a pretty easy to use system, and something that I think in the future we're going to see a lot more swimming pools with units like this installed. I'd like to thank Hayward for sending me this unit here, and I went ahead and clicked the notification that this includes paid content or paid sponsor content. And just for clarity, there was no payment or anything like that, but by virtue of me asking them to give me this so that I can talk about it with you and show you how it works, that counts as that. So that's why I've gone ahead and selected that. But I do want to be clear and let you know that nobody's paid me for this review. I'm interested in this product, and this is why I reached out to Hayward and requested that they send me one so that I could have it here at the bench top. We could unbox it, we could talk about it together, and then in a future video, of course, install it and operate it such that you're going to be able to see this whole process. In terms of the installation of the unit itself, there's really the only thing you need to know is that it needs to be installed before or upstream from any chlorination devices like a chlorine erosion feeder, for example, because the chlorine would damage this unit. So that's why it has to be before that. Similarly, you would want to install this after your heater. If you installed it before your heater, there's a chance that a short-lived H2O2 residual would damage your heater. That's why you wouldn't want to install it before your heater. So it comes the heater first, and then the AOP unit, and then the chlorinator, and then the water goes back to the pool after that. I hope you found this information helpful. If you did, please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And you can check out my website, swimmingpoolsteve.com.